Hello everyone, welcome to today's lecture where we are going to be talking about comparison operator. So over our past lectures, we have covered introduction to Python, to the basics of data type in Python, and we've talked about strings, variable, dictionaries, lists. We also covered tuples and booleans also. And we also spoke about we gave you guys assessments to work on, and we also did the solutions together. So if you have not watched the assessment, or if you have not tried out the assessments, please, I will encourage you to try it out. It's very important for you to understand the concepts that we covered in our previous class. And if you have any question, do well to always use the comment section. We are always there to answer you guys. So moving forward, since we've laid the fundamentals of data types, we're going to be talking about comparison operator. And basically, comparison operator is actually very important, and it allows us to compare variables and output a boolean value, right? So if you did the previous exercise that we gave you guys, you see that we also gave you guys some basic example on how you can compare different values and check if it's either true or if it's either false. So that's actually a great way of checking, of validating some user statements and all of that. And basically, if you have a sort of background in mathematics, this operator should be very straightforward, greater than, less than, and all of that. All right, good morning, Amit. I hope you are doing well. Good morning, chat. Right, so first, let's quickly go ahead to present the table of comparison, right? So let me just show you guys the table of comparison operator that we have here, and I'm going to explain it. All right, we talked about it previously in our exercise solution, right? So I'm going to attach the video also to the description below so that you can check it out. But let's go ahead to talk more in let's go ahead to talk more about it in depth, right? So we can understand it better, right? So quickly, you can see that we have this table of operator, and we're going to be using this example of A is equals to 3 and B is equals to 4. All right. So take note of this. So the first operator is this that we have here, which is double equals to. Now, what does this double equals to actually means? Good morning, Christian. So this double equals to actually checks if two operands are equal, right? And when I'm talking about operand, I'm just talking about the value that are assigned to a variable. So for this case, we have the we have this A operand and we have this B operand, all right? So then the condition becomes true, right? So if the first operand is equal to the second operand, right, then that means it meets this condition. So this double equals to means it's checking if the left hand side is equals to the right hand side. So if they are the same values, then it's going to return true, right? So for this example, A equals to B is not true because 3 and 4 are basically different, right? So it's going to return false. Had it been A was 4 and B was 4, and B is also 4, right? It's going to return true, as we all know that, right? But for this particular condition that we have here, it's going to return false. All right. So the next one that we also have is this exclamation mark and equals to, and you might pretty much see this also in other programming languages. What it means is it's going to check if the two operands are not equal, right? So if the two operands are not equal, then the condition becomes false. All right. So what do I mean by this? I'm talking about if A is not equals to B, then it's going to be true. So what this exclamation equals to means is checking if it is not equals to. All right. So that's one thing you should take note of, right? Because you're going to be using all of this comparison operator very well when you start doing um logics in your programming. All right. So in this case, we have A is not equals to B, which is true because 3 is not equals to 4. All right. So I hope you are following me in the chat. If you are following me, kindly drop yes in the chat so I can know that you are with me. All right. So next, we also have the greater than, and this is pretty much straightforward. And what it does is if the value of the left operand is greater than the value of the right operand, then the condition becomes true. All right. So in this case, if the value of the left operand, we have A, right? So this is the left operand right here, A, and the right operand is what? B. All right. So A is A greater than B. So is 3 greater than 4, then it's not true. That means it's false, right? So the condition only returns true if the left operand is greater than the right operand. All right, I can see you guys are following me. Very good. So for this next one also, it's just the vice versa of the greater than, right? So we also have this less than, and what less than does is it checks if the value of the left operand is less than the value of the right operand, right? So for this example, we have A is less than B, which is true, right? Because um 3 is basically less than 4. All right, so that's how that works. And next is this greater than equals to and less than equals to, right? So sometimes they can be pretty tricky, but if you can tend to understand how it works very well, they are going to be good to go. All right, so for this one, it checks if the value of the left operand is greater than or equals to the value of the right operand, then the condition becomes true. Now, what are we talking about? So for this case, now we have A is greater than equals to B, right? So it's saying that is 3 greater than or is 3 equals to B, which is not true. All right. Now, basically, if one of the condition, that's what you need to take note of. For example, we're going to talk about the next example right here, right? But just know that if you are using the or statement, it means that one condition has to be true. And we're going to look at logical operators very well when we go on with this lecture, talking about and operator, or operator, and how they work. All right. So lastly, we also have less than equals to, and what this does is it checks if the value of the left operand is less than or equals to the value of the right operand, then the condition becomes true. All right, so for this example, we have 3 is less than or equals to B, which is true, right? Because 3 is less than B than 4, right? So in a scenario where we have if A is equals to 3 and B is equals to 3, so let's say A is 3 and B is 3, then this condition is going to be true and this condition is going to be true. Why? Because 3 is equals to 3. All right, I hope you guys are getting what I'm trying to explain. All right, so now that we already understand how this basic comparison operator works, let's go ahead to look at them in action. All right, so let's do some basic operations with this. All right, so if I say, for example, 2 is equals to 2, right? So I'm just going to use a normal number right now before we start assigning variables, right? So we can get to understand it very well, right? So after we are done with this basic comparison operator, then we're going to go ahead to talk about chained comparison operators also. And that's where you're going to see us using the AND operator, OR operator, and so on and so forth. But for now, let's do some quick examples together on how this operator works, all right? So for example, if I have 2 is equals to 2, then my answer is going to be what? True. Why? Because the left operand is equal to the right operand. So if I run this cell, you're going to see that we have true here. All right. So that's one thing you should take note of. And if you also want to try out different examples, please feel free to also try it out. All right. But let's go ahead to look at some of these together. All right. So for example, if I also have something like 1 is equals to 0. So is 1 equals to 0, right? Is false. So we're going to get false. All right, so now let's try out the not equals to sign, right? So if I have something like 2 is not, which is exclamation mark, then equals to 2 is not equals to 1, then we're going to have what? True, because 2 and 1 basically are not the same. 2 is basically greater than 1. All right, so another example is if I have 2 is not equals to 2, right? This should return false because 2 is actually the same thing as 2. All right, very good. So if I run this cell, you're going to see we're going to have what? False, right? So it's pretty much simple and straightforward. So let's look at the greater than and less than before we go into this remaining two. All right. So the greater than is basically how it works. Like how I explained it in the previous lecture. So if I have like 2 is greater than, for example, 4, then it's going to return what? False, because 2 is basically less than 4. All right. And if I also have 2 is less than 4, this is going to return true, because 2 is less than um 2 is less than 4. All right. So now that we already have that out of the way, then let's go ahead to look at these examples together. Greater than equals to, less than equals to. All right. So yeah, I'm just going to write something like 2 is greater than equals to 2, right? And basically, before we run this cell, let's try to understand what's going on here. So what I'm actually saying here is I'm asking Python that is 2 greater than 2, or is 2 equals to 2. So let me break this down for you guys here. So in the real sense, what we're writing is, okay, this is true, I just ran the cell. But in the real sense, what we're writing is, so if you want to write comments in Python, you can use the hash. It's not going to get executed, right? So in the real sense, breaking this down, would be, let me just write it down for you guys here. So I have hash here, and we have what? Hash here. And I'll write what it's basically doing here for you guys. So I'm saying is 2 is greater than 2, right? This will return to what? False, right? Next, I'm saying is 2 is equals to 2. This will return what? True, right? So these the two things I'm actually writing here. Then once you have your false and true, what will not happen is Python will not check that once we say false or true, our answer will be what? True. Now, why is this happening? All right. So quickly, let me just explain the OR operator for you guys here. And how it works in Python. All right. So I'm going to try to bring out an image right here. So quickly, you can just come here, just open your new tab, and let's search for OR operator in Python. Right. And that's one thing you need to know as a developer, how to actually Google search and all of that. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open a OR operator logic table. So let me do OR operator logic table. Right. Exactly. So this is what we're looking for. So let's just open any image right here so we can understand how all works. All right. So we have this image right here. So let me just try to expand it very well for you guys so you can see it very well. All right. So I'm going to open this image and just tend to expand it. All right. So you can see this is coming from grid, right? So let me just zoom in for you guys so you can see it very well. All right. So now focus on this particular table here. We have these ones and we have these ones right here. All right. So we have X and Y. Now T basically means true and F basically means false, right? So for this AND operator, just know that the condition would only return true if both of the conditions are true. And that was what I was trying to explain in our previous meetings, if you joined the previous meeting also. All right. So T and T would result to T. So it will return a true value, right? So for example, if I'm saying that 2 is greater than and 2 is equals to 2 is greater than 1 and 2 is greater than and 2 is equals to 1. So what I'm saying is that AND operator right there, it means that the left hand side condition must be true and the right hand side condition must be true for it to return true. All right. But if condition is true and the other one is false, then automatically it's going to return false. So that's one thing you should take note of here. right? So now let's go to the or operator as we were explaining in our previous in our notebook, right? So the true operator would always return true if one of the condition is true. So for this case, we have t or t, then it's returning as what? T. T or f returning as t, f or t returning as what? T, and f of f returning as what? F. So just know that once one condition is true, for all operator is going to return true. But if both of them are false, then it's going to return false. But for AND operator, the the two condition must be true before it can return true. Now let's go back to our notebook and look at it very well. So now what we're saying here is false or true. And if I come back to our table here, you will see that we have it here, false or true, which is this line here, right? And once you do that, it's going to return to what? True. And that's why we are having um true here in our notebook. That's why it's returning true. All right. So if you guys got what I explained, please drop it in the comment section so that we can proceed with the lecture. All right. So that's one of the way you are going to know how. Okay, let me see if it's working. You're going to know how Python is going to actually execute the code. All right. So let me just confirm to see if we are actually live. Very good. So basically, that's how Python actually checks it, right? So you can actually calm down and do some more examples to understand it better. But I just broke this down for you guys, what is actually happening here. All right. So now let's go on to the next example. All right. So let's go on to the next example. And for the next example, we're going to be talking about the less than operator, right? So we've done greater than equals to. So let's go ahead to do less than equals to now. So if I say 2 is less than equals to 4, right? So if I say 2 is less than equals to 4, then basically what I'm saying is I'm saying that is 2 less than 4, or is 2 equals to 4, right? So let's go ahead to break this down, right? Let's break this down just like how we did here. So I'm just going to copy and paste this here. So what is happening here is I'm saying is 2 less than 4, and is 2 equals to what? 4. For this one, 2 is less than 4, right? So we're going to have true. Or UE. And 2 is equals to 4. We're going to have what? False, right? So here we're going to have what? True or false, right? And if we say true or false, if we come back to our image here, you see that we're going to have what? We're going to have true or false. We're going to have what? True, right? So that's what's basically happening here. All right. So in a nutshell, I hope you guys understood this particular basic comparison operator. That's how it works basically in Python. And if you can try to do multiple examples by yourself, you can play around with this just to make sure that you understand what is going on here very well. All right. So next we're going to be talking about the chained comparison operator right now. So I'm going to go back to my notes. You can see here that I already created a new folder called Python comparison operator, and that's where we're going to be doing all the comparison exercises and practice that we're going to be doing. All right. So if I go back to my Python comparison operator, I'm going to come here and I'm going to create a new notebook. All right. So this notebook, I'm going to name it select this default kernel, and I'm going to name this O2, right? Chained chained comparison operator, right? So let me just say operators. So going to be working with multiple operator, right? So for comparison operator, what we're going to be doing is actually a very interesting one, because that's where you are now going to start playing around with different logics, right? Doing using the and operator, using the or operator to basically see how Python can do some interesting stuffs, right? So it's actually an interesting feature in Python, and is the ability to chain multiple comparison to perform more complex tests, right? So what am I talking about? I'm saying that you can actually have like more than one comparison operator. Right here we're just doing just one comparison operator, right? So you can have more than one comparison operator. Try to chain them together. So when we're saying chain them together, we're saying that we're trying to bring them together to see how Python can actually perform some complex tests and try to meet what we're trying to do, right? So that's what comparison operator is. And you can actually use this chain operator comparison as shorthand or for larger Boolean expression, right? So if you want to perform larger Boolean expression, this would be a very, very good one to actually use chain comparison operator, right? And what we're going to learn in this particular lecture is we're going to learn how to chain comparison operators, and we will also talk more in depth about the and or operator, right? Remember I explained what and or operator is, but for this chained operator, chained comparison operators, right? We're going to look at how interesting it is to use the and or operator. All right. So let's go ahead to start the video. All right. To continue our lecture, rather. All right. So for here, from here, I'm going to say just this basic example. So for example, I can have something like 1 is less than 2 and is less than 3, right? So if I'm running this, what is basically happening is um I'm saying that is 1 less than 2 and is 2 less than 3, right? So I'm saying that is 1 less than 2, which is what true, right? So that's true. And is 2 less than 3, which is also true. So true and true will return to what? True. That's why if I run this, we're going to have true. But the proper way you are going to write this in Python, because sometimes this might be really confusing, and right now I'm sure you guys might not really also get it. So the best way to write it is to say 1 is less than 2, right? And um 2 is less than 3, right? So you can actually decide not to use space, right? You can decide not to use space. Anyone is the same, but to keep my code clean, I like using space, right? So you can choose whatever one you want. It's going to work fine, right? So if I go ahead to run this, basically we're going to get the same what the same output. So if I run this cell, you're going to see we're going to have what true. And what is happening here? Let's break this down, right? So I'm just going to come here, copy the format that I'll be using before, and we're going to break it down so you're going to understand what's going on here, right? So let's break this down. So what I'm saying here is I'm saying is 1 less than 2 and is 2 less than 3, right? So here 1 is less than 2, obviously that's why I should go in and return true, and 2 is also less than 3, so it's going to return true also, right? So true um and true is going to return true, just like how we have in our table. All right, true and true is going to return what you can see here, right? True and true is going to return what true. So that's why here in Python we also have true. All right, I hope you guys are following me in the chat. All right, so let's take a look at another example, right? And basically and is to make sure that the two conditions have to be true. Take note, and is to make sure that the two conditions has to be true for it to actually return true statements. All right, so that's one thing you should take note of. All right, so let's quickly take a look at another example of this AND operator also. So I can also say here that for example, I can say is 2 less than 3, right? And 2 is greater than 1, right? So let's break this down. Let's break this down. Before we even run the cell, let's break this down, right? So what is going to happen here is it's going to check is 2, right? Is 2 greater than 3, which is what? False, right? And is 2 greater than 1, which is what? True, right? Because 2 is greater than 1. So this is going to result towards false and true, which is going to give us what? False, right? Our table. So false and true is going to give us what? False, right? So if I come here and I run this cell, so let me just try to open this. Let me see what's happening. Oh, okay. So what is happening is I wrote less than here and it should be greater than, because basically 2 is less than 3. So this should be greater than, right? Very good. Thank you for pointing that out. All right. So I'm just going to run this cell. Yes, exactly. I should get false. All right. So 2 is greater than 3, which is false, and 2 is greater than 1, which is true. So false and true would give you true. Now, if you notice that if I copy this same thing that I have here and I paste it here and I try to use the OR operator, right? Don't forget, OR will always return true as far as one condition is true. All right. So this is going to be false, this is going to be true. Then false or true would return to what? True. So it should be false. Right. This will return to what? True. Right. So you can see that now we have true, because basically the OR operator is going to return true if one condition is actually true. All right. So that's how it works for Python. I hope you guys are following. All right. So let's look at more interesting examples. So for example, if I want to check for okay, let me see if I can bring out some other examples right here so we can actually look at it together. All right. So let's combine um the um the comparison operator that we learned just of recent. We've already used this greater than or less than, right? But let's go ahead to work with not equals to and equals to right now to see how we can actually chain these different operators together. All right. So if I come here right now and I'm going to say 1 is equals to 2, right? Or 2 is less than 3. All right. I like leaving space right here. So now what is going to happen? Before we run this cell, let's break it down, because that's what I like doing, right? Let's break it down. So what we're saying is we're checking is 1 equals to 1 is equals to 2, right? Which is what? False, right? Because 1 is actually not equals to 2, it's less than 2. And we're saying is 2 less than 3, right? 2 is less than 3, which is actually what? True, right? Because 2 is actually less than 3. So or false or true, because we're using the or operator right here. So false or true would actually give us what? True, right? So you can see here that we have true right here. All right. And let's look at another example, right? So let's say what 1 is equals to 1, or 100 is equals to 1 also, right? So if I run this cell, what we're going to have is what? We're going to have what? True, because 1 is actually equals to 1, right? So and one condition is already true. As far as one condition is true, then it's going to return true. All right. So let's take a look at how we can actually use this in a real scenario. So let's say, for example, I'm telling you to write a code to check if a user is qualified to write to to get admitted into the university. All right. So what is the age range of someone getting into the uni? Can anyone tell me in the comment section? I think it should be around 16. All right. So let's say you want to write a code to check if a user is qualified to get admitted into a university, right? So um what we can do is we can say um we can just assume that the user age, right? The user age is what? Let's say the user age is 20, right? And to know if, so let's check right now. So let's check if the user age is less than 16, right? So how do we know this? What we can just do is we can just say um user age user age is less than 16, right? So user age is less than 16. If I run this would actually return false. Why? Because 20 is actually less greater than 16, not less than 16, right? So basically we can use this value that we have right here to now check. For example, let me just quickly do an example for you guys. Don't worry, just copy whatever I'm doing. I'm going to be using the if statement quickly, and that's what we'll be learning in our next lecture, right? So based on this condition, we can now use this for complex logic, right? So I can say, for example, if user age is less than 16, right? 16, I can say print. So I'm just going to put a semicolon here and click enter and leave a tab space right here. So I'll just say print, sorry, you can't be admitted, right? But else, I can say else, I can just say print, can print congrats, you can be admitted into our university, right? So I can just come here and just run it. So automatically my age is 16, and if I come here and I run this cell, you can see it's saying congrats, right? So it's saying congrats, you can be admitted into our university. Do you understand? So now to make this actually interesting, what we can do is we can just try to collect user input, right? So I can just say, for instead of me assigning default value here, I can just come here and say my user age will be equals to, and I can collect user input. So to collect a user input in Python, you're going to use what? Input, right? You're going to use input, and yeah, I can just say enter your age, right? And if I say enter your age, what's going to happen is Python is going to come here and prompt the user to enter his age, right? So after the user enter the age, I'll just print and I'll use f string right here, and I'll just say your age is age is and I'll say the user age that the user entered, right? So let me go ahead to run this cell, and you see you say enter your age, right? So if I come here and I say um let's say I'm 18, right? So when I click enter, you can see that it's showing that my age is 18, right? So now let's check if whatever the user enters is greater than 18. But one thing I want you to know is the return type right here is going to be a string, not an integer. Now how do we do that? Let's check, right? So let's check type. So sorry, so let me just quickly come here and let's check type of what? user age, right? So click, you can see right here we have what string, right? So if you try to use, you cannot use string for comparison operator. It has to be an integer, right? So if I try to do that, we're going to have error, right? So what you can do is when the user enters the input, you can convert it to an integer by saying int here. So whatever the user enters, we're going to convert it to an integer, right? Um, yes. So if I run this cell, right, and I say, for example, 12, you can see your age is 12. And if I check type of user age again, you can see now we now have integer, right? So what we can do here is to convert the value to integer whenever the user enters a value, right? So now, without being said, let's now go ahead to run this together. So let me just copy this, and I'll come here and I'll paste it here, right? So yeah, I'm just going to say sorry, you can't be admitted because you are let me just put user age and it's less than 16. All right, so yeah, I'm just going to say congrats, you can be admitted into our university, right? So let's run this cell and let's test our code together. So if I run this cell right now, it's going to ask me enter your age, and I'm going to say 11. I'm going to say your age is 11, sorry, you can't be admitted because you are sorry. So let me use f string right here, f string, and yeah, don't use f string right here because now it's just seeing the user age, it's not seeing it as a variable, right? So you have to use the f string right here. So let's run it again and let's say 11. So you can see enter your age 11, your age is 11, sorry, you can't be admitted because you are 11 and it's less than 16. All right, so let's try it with something else. So let's say 22. If I run this cell, and you can see congrats, your age is 22, and congrats, you can be admitted into the university. All right, so this is just a basic way of how we can use change comparison operator, also comparison operator. I hope you guys understood this. If you do not understand if statement, don't worry, we're going to be explaining about this in our next lecture. So just try to understand how comparison operator works and how change comparison operator works, right? But to be honest, if you can practice this by yourself, because to master this, you need to Lady Black, good morning. All right, so to master this, you need to actually practice by yourself, run the code over and over again, just to make sure that things work very well for you. All right, so if you have watched the video and you've practiced it and you feel that um you are good to go, then in our next lecture we're going to be talking about some basics of Python statements. So we're going to start the introduction to if statements, else statements, how we can actually work with logical operators, comparison operators together with this if statement and else statement. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, please do well to always smash that like button. It's very, very important so that our videos can reach more audience. And I'll see you guys in the next lecture. Bye bye.